Hey guys, so I wanted to get on here and do a video showing how I use a baking scale or just a food scale for baking. I get questions about how to use the scale, or do I have volume, cup measurements or tablespoon measurements for my recipes. And honestly, it's so much more accurate and easy to do it with a scale. The results will be a lot more consistent. I do have my baby here in the walker, so if you guys hear him, that is what you hear. But yeah, you have less dirty dishes using a scale. Once you get the hang of it, it's so much easier and a lot less cleanup. So I'm gonna go ahead and get started. I'm making hot dog buns, but I'm gonna use my dinner roll recipe, my 60-minute dinner roll recipe. So I will have that linked in the description box. And then also, if you guys are not following me on Facebook, I will leave that link, as well as a link to my fresh milled flour baking community on Facebook. I will leave that link in the description as well. All right, let's get started. So I'm putting my mixer bowl on here, and I'm going to turn the scale on. And it's automatically going to zero out the bowl. So it's not gonna take the weight of the bowl because I'm putting it on as the scale turns on. So right now it says 0. It's on 0, the bowl is zeroed out. So I'm gonna measure out my wheat berries. And today I'm gonna use 700 grams of wheat berries because I'm making a larger batch. And if you do not know this, 700 grams of wheat berries, or any amount of grams of wheat berries, is gonna be the same after you mill it. So if you're following a recipe and it calls for 500 grams of wheat berries, it's gonna still be 500 grams even after it's milled. I do get that question a lot as well. All right, so once I have my 700 grams, I'm a little bit over, so all I do is just take some out and then until I get to 700. Now, if you go a little bit under or a little bit over, it will be fine because we're measuring in grams. We're not measuring in cups, so we're not going a whole cup over or a cup under, or even a half a cup under or over. They're just grams, and so you don't have to be super particular about it. If you're over or under a few grams, it will still be fine. So I'm gonna mill this grain, and then we'll go ahead and get back to the rest of the recipe, showing how I use the scale. Okay, so while your grain is milling, mine is actually done milling, but it was too loud to continue to record. But while your grain is milling, this is the time to go ahead and measure out the rest of your ingredients. So I'm gonna be adding 511 grams of water. So to measure that out, you just get you a glass of water and pour it directly in. Pour slowly, especially if you're new to using a scale. Almost there. And all right, so just a few grams over, but again, I don't mind. All right, so now here's the part where it really saves you on dishes. I am gonna continue pouring things into my bowl and weighing it. So this is an important part. This tare button, it zeroes out the scale. So when I push this button, this number then goes to 0 so that I can continue to measure more ingredients. So I am going to press tare, and now we're back to 0. So now I can take my oil, and I'm gonna measure out 50 grams of oil. Don't try to follow this as a recipe because I have, again, I'm doing more, so that's why my ingredients are more than my normal dinner roll recipe. And again, I'm making hot dog buns with the dinner roll recipe, but I'm measuring out 50 grams of oil. 50 grams. All right, and we're a couple over. Again, it does not matter at all. A couple grams is not going to change the recipe. And so now I've measured my oil. And so the next ingredient I'm gonna measure is honey. So again, I'm gonna zero out my scale, bring this number to 0 by pressing this tare button. Also, additionally, so right now we're on grams. If you can see that little G there, that's for grams. If I press the mode button, it can change to kilograms, to ounces, to pounds and ounces, to pounds, and then now we're back to grams. So I'm gonna measure out my honey. So far I have my water and my oil in the bowl. Okay, so now I have my honey, and I'm gonna do about 49 grams of honey. And I just pour directly from the containers. Again, the whole purpose of this is to save on dishes. And so I was able to measure my water, oil, and honey without having to dirty any dishes outside of the bowl that I'm already going to be mixing in. Okay, and so now I'm gonna be putting my flour into the bowl. And again, the flour has already been measured, so I don't need to weigh that again. Okay, so I'm gonna measure out my yeast into this little glass here because this is gonna go into the recipe later. And I want to show another way that you can measure. So let's turn our scale on. I could have left this on here and it would have zeroed it out automatically since the scale wasn't on yet, but I want to show you how to zero out your container. So you can put the container on and then press the tare button, and now we're at 0. And so I can pour my yeast in here to measure it, and let's say I want 10 grams of yeast. There we go, we have our 10 grams, and I can then put this into my recipe. But let's say I didn't even want to get this dish here. I could put my entire container of yeast on here and tare it out or zero it out, and then I would take my whole thing. Give me one moment, okay, baby? Okay, and then I would take my whole thing and let's go ahead and pour some out. Let's say we want about 10 grams. And now when I put it back on, it's gonna tell me how much I've used. So that was 7, and then a little bit more. And now we're at 9 grams, and it's giving me a negative number because it's letting me know that's how much is removed from my container. So then I would just do a little bit more to get it to 10 grams. I do this method when my ingredients are already in the mixer and I just want to grab my yeast quickly and just use it and not have to grab another dish. So this is another way to measure, is by putting the entire container of whatever it is that you're about to be using, putting it on the scale, and then taking some from it, and it'll give you a negative number showing you how much has been removed from the container. So that is another way to measure as well. So I'm going to continue on with my recipe. I do already have a video for the recipe. If you guys want to see the recipe, you can find that on my channel. I'll have it linked below. If you guys have any other questions, feel free to comment down below and I will be sure to answer those. Again, check out the description for a link to this recipe, as well as my Facebook page and my Facebook group called Fresh Milled Flour with Lovely Belle and Dr. Mel. And also check out Just Mill It. That is Dr. Mel's website. Check that out as well. She has some wonderful recipes there as well. All right, guys, thank you so much for watching. I hope that was helpful.